Yeah, we're on YouTube now.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us on our Planning Advisory Committee meeting this Thursday, the 19th of November. As ever, please bear with us if there are any technical issues. And if the meeting has to be halted for any reason, the minutes will be posted on our website as usual. And please also be aware this meeting is being recorded. All attendees are automatically muted. And if they would like to raise a question, please do so via the Q&A board, and you will be free to either ask the question or join the meeting in person. There is a couple of topics on the agenda tonight, so please be aware we are running this meeting at a safe space. We encourage all participants to be respectful of others' opinions and views, and be mindful that what you say may have an impact on the emotions of others. As normal, councillors, if you wish to comment or ask a question, please physically raise your hand so that either myself, Jane, or Hannah can see it. Jane will clerk as normal to help sure we don't miss any important questions, and attempt to show any plans and photos on the screen if and when necessary. And Hannah will take the minutes. So without further ado, item number 1 on the agenda: questions, comments and information from public and councillors that don't refer to anything further down on the agenda or any of the planning applications. So if there's any other questions? No, that's excellent. Thank you very much. Item number 2, apologies for absence and any declaration of many members' interests.
I haven't received any apologies. Great.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Hannah. Item number 3 on the agenda: to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of October. So if we've all read the minutes, hopefully, if I could get someone to propose those. Thank you, Anita, and someone to second. Thank you, Mark, and a vote from councillors. Apart from Andy Palmer.
I think Andy perhaps wasn't at the meeting.
Oh, you weren't at the meeting, yep. Right, thank you. Excellent, right, which brings us straight on to item number 4, which is open discussion on Mendip District Council proposal to build affordable housing at the Eastfield site, which is, for those who don't know, behind the cemetery off the Warminster Road on the A362. And I'm now going to hand over to Jane, who is going to give us a brief history and where we are at the moment. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you. So this item is listed as an open discussion. So there is no report and there's no recommendation. It's just really about making sure that everybody knows what has happened to date and what we know, and then we can open up for discussion at the end. So the proposal for land Easthill to be developed for affordable housing was first brought to our attention the day before it was due to be discussed at the Mendip Cabinet meeting on the 2nd of November, and the proposals are for 100% affordable housing, including 50% social rent. The report to Cabinet outlines several sites across Mendip, including 2 in Frome, so that's land at Easthill and North Braid Car Park. At that meeting, councillors voted unanimously to undertake viability work for the sites to be explored as potential sites for affordable housing, and to approve the proposed transfer of all the sites to the Astor Housing Group, subject to planning consent for the development of affordable and social housing. In response to that, we received a lot of emails and questions from residents and Mendip councillors asking what we knew about this and expressing their concerns about the site being developed. All of these comments have been recorded, and no one at FTC, Frome Town Council, knew anything about the proposals. But Mendip have since sent a link to an online article that was published in February 2018 on the Somerset Live website, which referred to the grant money that Mendip had received and specifically mentioned Easthill. I do not recall seeing that, and I'm not sure if any of our councillors did. So following on from the Cabinet meeting on the 2nd of November, there was a Mendip full council meeting on the 3rd of November, and some residents had requested to speak at that meeting in respect of East Hill, but the chair declined to take the questions, saying they would be referred to the Scrutiny Board meeting. On the 3rd of November, Frome Town Council hosted a regular meeting of all 3 tiers of council, where we expressed our strong disappointment at the way that Mendip had dealt with this process, with no consultation with us or residents. And this view was also shared by the Mendip councillors at that meeting, who had not been directly involved in the process. Then, on the 9th of November, we were advised that groundworks were taking place at East Hill, and we then received a statement from the leader of Mendip District Council, Councillor Ros Wyke, who had issued a statement saying that small areas of vegetation were being carefully cleared in preparation for ground investigation works, so soil testing, and that the work is being carried out by a specialist consultant on behalf of Mendip on council-owned land, and an ecologist is present on site supervising the activity. And those investigations are part of the exploratory work on the site for affordable and social housing, subject to planning permission. The Mendip Scrutiny Board then met on the 16th of November and called in the decision by Cabinet on the following grounds, specifically relating to the East Hill site. And they were saying that was because it contravened the following principles of good decision making. So proper consultation and the taking of professional advice from officers, a presumption in favour of openness, and that it is not in accordance with the council's budget and policy framework. In the scrutiny report, members also set out that they believe that the potential impact that development of the East Hill site would have would not be in accordance with some of the local plan policies, so those surrounding local identity and distinctiveness, biodiversity and ecological networks, bat protection and environmental protection. They also felt that developing the site would be in conflict with the council's corporate priorities, which are to build a fairer, greener and more vibrant Mendip that values our distinctive towns and rural communities, to be transparent and open in our decision making, and to deliver on our climate and ecological commitment, which includes protect our local ecology and find ways to enhance biodiversity. As a result of this call-in, it was agreed that the Cabinet's decision made on the 2nd of November in respect of affordable and social housing delivery be referred back to Cabinet for reconsideration. Nearly there. Although unfortunately residents were not allowed to speak at that meeting either. So the next Mendip Cabinet meeting to reconsider East Hill is on the 26th of November. The accompanying report is available on Mendip's website now. But in summary, that report sets out that the call-in has identified the possibility that some members of the public may not have fully understood the precise location of these sites. In addition, the Scrutiny Committee, meeting on the 16th of November, also suggested that the land at East Hill has issues requiring review in respect of ecology, best value, drainage, consultation and consideration of alternative sites. It confirms that further reports and surveys will need to be carried out or updated in respect of the above, and notes that for suggested alternative sites, which we know that the alternative sites that had been suggested were the former TH Whites and Western Vinyl sites. They have said that alternative sites in Frome would already have been identified by housing associations and mainstream developers. Those sites that are viable to develop will come forward without the council's intervention. And just to further explain that a bit, the Land Release Fund, from which Mendip received the grant funding to bring forward affordable housing, it's quite specific about how the money can be used. So it can only be used on land which is owned by local authorities, and to help bring sites forward for housing that wouldn't have normally been developed. So we know those 2 sites already have planning permission for housing. So I don't believe that would meet the criteria. And, you know, we've also asked why can't the money be used to provide additional affordable housing at Saxon Mill? And whilst we've not really had an answer to this, I suspect it would not be able to be used because of the fact the site would come forward for development anyway, but we'll still continue to push for this. The recommendation of the Cabinet paper, in summary, is to either transfer all the sites to Astor, as previously agreed, or to transfer 3 of the sites to Astor and to pause the proposed transfer of land adjoining East Hill Cemetery to Astor to allow time for review of the issues raised by members. So if anyone wants to speak at the Cabinet meeting on the 26th of November, they'll need to register with the committee officer in advance, and at the discretion of the chair will be given 3 minutes to speak. So that covers all the, you know, what's happened with the various committees so far. But just to add that, you know, we are very aware of the constraints of this site for development. So that includes all the trees on the site are covered by a tree protection order with veteran and notable trees on the site. There are potential flooding issues, there's valuable ecology and potential access issues. There will need to be detailed surveys and reports carried out before any planning application can be considered. We also know the site is currently protected as an area, no, I always get this wrong, an open area of local significance. And that states where sites are covered by that, permission will not be granted for development which would harm the contribution to distinctive local character. Now, the local plan part 2 process proposed changes to the open areas of local significance, that they all be transferred across to being local green spaces, which actually does afford slightly more protection than the current policy. However, the designation of the land at East Hill was removed from the local plan part 2. What am I looking for? Designation. But the cemetery did still remain with that designation. What has happened since then? I'm sorry, I should have said we did object to that at the time because we did pick that up. The local plan inspector has said that Mendip should consider transferring the open areas of local significance to local green spaces because he didn't feel that they had done a comprehensive assessment of all of the existing sites. I believe that's been removed from the local plan part 2 process, but I will need to get clarification on that point. And although this is not a planning consideration, we've also heard a lot of concern expressed over the potential loss of this land, as it was understood that it was originally purchased as a future extension to the cemetery. And East Hill Cemetery, I believe, is the only remaining active cemetery, if that makes sense, in Frome, where residents can be buried. And, you know, a lot of people are concerned about, you know, what that will mean going forward. You know, where can residents be buried? So that's all of the concerns covered. And just lastly to say, you know, in my opinion, since this was first published online in February 2018, even though we didn't see it, Mendip have had every opportunity to contact us and residents to have discussions about these proposals, and that hasn't happened. But I'd also just want to emphasise that it's the process of communication and engagement with Town Council and residents that Mendip has failed here, and would add that Frome Town Council are in favour of more affordable and social housing being built. That's just hopefully brought everybody up to date with what's happened, where we are, and hand it back to you for some discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for that. Very,
No.
very good. Yeah, no, excellent. No, it's very clear. I noticed there's a few Mendip District Council have joined who have asked to say something first. So if it's all right with Frome Town councillors, I was going to ask the Mendip councillors first to speak, and then we can follow on after that if anyone's got an issue with that. So I've got Janine and Adam. Janine, do you want to say anything, or you just here, or and Adam? I know Adam's got his hand up.
I've just promoted Janine as panelist, so she should be able to speak.
All right.
Just need to unmute yourself, Janine, if you can.
I just had a panic because I thought I'd lost you completely. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry I wasn't available yesterday. Everything Jane said is pretty much where we're at. I don't think there's any new news to add on where we are. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to say that in respect to the other two brownfield sites, just because we've got land release funds for the original project doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other ways of working in partnership with the other two brownfield sites. Public works money is still available as far as I'm aware. And there are other ways to skin a cat. So I'm still hoping that we can have a look at those sites as the alternative. Adam's been working really, really hard, and we're still fighting to try and get this overturned. I don't know how successful we'll be, but we're not giving up. And so long as we can prevent Eastfield from coming forward, that's the plan, as far as I see it anyway. And there's nothing really more to add. I just wanted to say that, you know, there's a core of us who are against this and think that the brownfield sites are better. And even if we can't develop them ourselves, I do think there's room for partnership. And as you know, I've copied some of you guys into connecting with the agents and with the landowners for the other two sites. And I just hope it'll go somewhere.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. Good to hear.
I would also actually, just while I'm on, Wiltshire and Baines are both working with, so Wiltshire are doing eco homes on their own land, and they've used land release funds. And I've taken some really good advice from them. Actually, the two guys running it are people I used to work with. So I'm still, there are ways that you can transfer the land release funds. There's criteria, but you can apply, and I'm hoping that we can explore that. I haven't got any answers on that at the moment, but that's all kind of going on in the background.
Great. Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Janine. Adam, do you want to jump in? Let's see, raise your hand. Let Adam in, Hannah. Adam, hi.
Hello, hi, yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Jane gave an excellent summary of the situation, and I've been working, as Janine said, been working for a few weeks on this with Janine and Helen Sporson White and Drew Gardner, who sends his apologies tonight. He would like to have been here to talk about this, and a few others in Frome and the rest of the district, because my concern, like Jane's, is the quality of the habitat and the trees on site. That's the reason for the concern, but my main concern is also the lack of information that's been put out in the public domain about the suitability of the site, the capacity of the site, the environmental constraints. There's been no report of any sort in the public domain from Mendip's officer team that's been working on this, or the portfolio holder or others. And that's really makes me sad, because I do this sort of job for a living, putting environmental information in the public domain and consulting on things. And it's a real shame to see your own council, your own political group go ahead like this in this way. And that if we had more information, as I've asked for, and I've got part of that, but it's not in the public domain. I've had members of the council. We've had the arboricultural report, the tree report. We've had two or three of the ecological reports, one of which is a bit out of date and insufficient. And we've had Eve Tigwell go on site and have a look, and has made some comment, as in the manager monitor of Modern Nature Reserve and former chair of trustees of Somerset Wildlife Trust, very eminent local ecologist. And I know Julian Height has been on site, and he's sent another report, and I've circulated them both to Mendip District councillors and put a presentation together. I wrote the call-in request, and that was supported by Janine, Helen and Drew and another councillor, and that was successful. So we got it to scrutiny board, and 4 members of the public did actually speak at the scrutiny board, so that was good. And then that was successful in that it was a unanimous vote of Mendip, all Mendip District councillors on scrutiny of all political parties, or none, voted to get it back to cabinet. And now that was successful. So it's a long process, and the cabinet meeting is next week on Thursday, and there's a report now you can read, and there's a recommendation that there's two options: either to carry on as before, or to remove East Hill from the current programme, to pause development proposals for that site, because that would allow time to allow the issues raised by councillors to be considered. Now, I really like it if Frome Town Council felt the need to do that, to write in support of that option and explaining your reasons as to why that is. That's very important, that the parish council, the town council, with the weight that it has, says what it needs to say, and hopefully you can all agree to do that tonight. And not just about the quality of the site and the environment of the site, but the process going forward. Because I would really like you to tell our colleagues at Mendip how you would have done this process, but how you would like to see Mendip District Council working with the town council and working with residents to assess sites, the suitability of the sites, and consult with information on the site and other alternatives and the ways forward, and actually engage the community on this. Not just tell everybody what they're going to do a week before they decide to do it, because that's what's happened here. And I'm going to keep on working at this, keep on working on the officers and the senior councillors at Mendip to try and impress on them the need to have a better suitability, capacity, constraints analysis process, a better engagement process, more information earlier on. I proposed a motion which was actually supported by my colleague leader Ross White 2 years ago at Mendip, which the then administration shot down in flames. But I'm going to bring that back to say, well, we need to do this now, because then this situation would have been avoided, because we would have had a proper process to assess the site and have information in the public domain so people can see what it's all about before decisions are made. That's what I think. But yeah, what do you all think? I want to listen now and hear what you all think too. So thank you.
Well, we will be making comments to Mendip District Council, Adam, and that's one of the reasons why we're discussing it tonight. I'm not sure we'll actually come up with a statement tonight, but we'll definitely come up with a statement that will be sent to the cabinet before the 26th. That goes without saying.
Thank you. And this is about the wider issue of site selection, and it's good to hear we all want social and affordable housing in Frome. The question is where and how do you develop that, and how you get to a situation where every site that's selected, there's not an uproar around it, and it doesn't therefore happen which is possibly at East Hill now. So where can we develop social housing in a sustainable manner in Frome? That's very important to as a separate issue, but that's probably an even bigger issue, really.
Indeed.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Adam. I'm going to bring in Anita and then Anne, because I see you've got your hands raised at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thanks, Adam. That was really good news to hear, actually. The question I have is because I've seen information flying around, and I wondered if we could talk a little bit more about what you touched on, Jane, regarding the transfer of the land to Frome at one stage. I've seen things that say it was handed to Frome for a period of 25 years. I mean, if that's true, have we gone beyond that 25 years? Is it something we can contest in terms of ownership of the land itself, or are we convinced it does actually belong to Mendip?
So right at the beginning of when we were aware of this happening, I did a land registry search, because there was also some were concerned that actually Town Council would be making money out of this happening, which is not the case. The land registry deed shows that the land is owned by Mendip. The issue was that it was only actually registered about 3 years ago, and it was shown as being sold by somebody Wainwright, I believe, back in 1930 something. Now, whether it was ever owned by anybody in between that, such as the Frome Urban District Council, whatever, it doesn't say on the registry document, because, as I say, it was only done 3 years ago. I was been talking to Paul Wynne about this, and actually what we need to see is the actual deed itself and not just the land registry document, because once if we can see the deed, then actually your question can be answered properly. I don't know the answer without having seen that deed. I believe Paul may have asked for it to be shared, but I'm not aware that that's happened yet. It may be that there are some kind of covenants on there, or it refers to it as being bought for land to be used as a cemetery extension. I mean, that's certainly what I've always understood. And I believe one of the residents did actually send us some documentation that backed that up, but I would have to look that out. So yeah, that's as much as I know at this point.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks. Anne, do you want to jump in? Yeah.
My question is a bit of a process question, so it's probably for one of the Mendip district councillors to answer if they can. It's what additional information will the cabinet be presented with when they revisit this decision? Because if they're presented with exactly the same information second time around, surely they'll come to the same decision. So what additional information will they be party to in order to make this revised decision?
Adam, can you answer that? Okay.
Yes, hi Steve. Yes, I can, and the answer is nothing more at the moment, apart from in the public domain. There's a brief report on the cabinet meeting page, which sets out the concerns of scrutiny board, which is very briefly summarised. I was after a sort of full disclosure approach to release all the background reports which the council's actually commissioned into ecology, landscape, heritage, drainage, cemetery constraints, planning policy, etc. But that hasn't happened because they were produced for the due diligence of the council for its assets team. And there's a sort of argument going on within the council as to how much information should be made public at the moment, and I'm helping that along. But cabinet will have more information because we've had some of the background reports passed to us behind the scenes, so they will know the importance of the site for ecology and the importance of the trees, for example, because they've been sent the reports. They're not in the public domain, but they have seen them. So, and we've been having discussions on these very matters. So they are much better informed than they were last time, although no member of the public will see those reports as yet. I hope that helps.
But the councillors will, and therefore they should be able to come to a more informed decision. Is that what you're saying, Adam?
That's what I'm saying. It's not a comprehensive suite of reports because they haven't all been released by the officers in charge of the project at the moment. But there's been 3 ecology reports, which I've reviewed and commented on, an arboriculture report and a tree constraints plan, and a baseline report which kind of brings it all together. It doesn't say any more than those say. And the flaws in the original ecology report and its purpose, I've not. And that's been released to Somerset Wildlife Trust and the local ecologist Steve Tigwell and Somerset County ecologists as well. So there's comments from those, but they're behind the scenes. They're not public, but cabinet will be informed, has been informed about that.
And is there any justification as why they shouldn't be in the public domain? I can't imagine that there's anything commercially sensitive or anything that would warrant them not being in the public domain? Is there, can you see any justification why they shouldn't be published?
He's gone.
That's the argument I'm having at the moment. So, you know,
Great.
that's the argument I'm having.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we need to start an arrangement.
John, can I just, I know Andy Jones wants to make a statement on behalf of, I think, Fair Housing for Frome. So if we can let Andy make his statement first, and then as councillors, then we can crack on, if that's okay with everybody. So Hannah, can you allow Andy? Here we go. There's Andy.
Hi, I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah.
So Fair Housing for Frome obviously did meet and discuss what we knew of these proposals, which is very little, but we did put a form of words together that we'd like to get into the public domain. Basically, this says that Fair Housing for Frome is generally supportive of anything that addresses the need for additional social housing in Frome, but regrets the lack of public consultation in this proposal. In our view, there are many better ways to provide affordable housing for Frome, and in particular, the decision to perpetuate Mendip's reliance on Asta as a social housing service provider is disappointing, given the opportunity to work closely with Frome Community Land Trust to deliver truly affordable housing in perpetuity. We are also concerned with the choice of a greenfield site in preference to including additional social housing within one of the brownfield sites that are available for development. And in particular, we don't support the creation of a dedicated social housing community. Our view is that social housing should always be provided as an integrated element of any and all new developments, such as Saxon Vale, where there is ample opportunity to provide additional social housing.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Jane and John, did you want to jump in first before I go to Jane, or no? Okay, go to Jane then.
Thank you. I was just going to ask if Andy would be happy to send me a copy of that, because I think that's important to reflect in our note to Cabinet before the meeting next week.
It'll be on its way to you in 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Right. Any more questions? I think Sarah Bishop. Sarah, would you like to raise a question? Annie? Hello, Sarah. I think you're on mute.
Hello.
Hello. That doesn't sound like Sarah.
Hello. This is her husband, Simon.
Oh, hello, Simon. Sorry.
That's right. I mean, I'm a local resident, and I think the thing that I found really the most interesting thing is the thing about the designation that's been removed from this site, and that seems to me to be a key thing, really, because it was designated as a local green space, which is part of a national thing, programmed by the government, really, and that suddenly it's been removed from it, and that protection gave it protection against being developed. And that seems to be, a key. What I would like to know is who removed that designation, and is there any kind of policy that Mendip have on the designation thing? And also the other thing I found is digging a little bit on the internet really is that the total amount of money that they've received, Mendip, has been £826,000, I think, from the LRF, from that funding money. And in a recent report, one of the councillors said, that there's, I can't remember how much, it was 500 and something was left, which means that there's about £250,000 unaccounted for. And I wonder what can be done, can that be looked into somehow, really? And also, I just think that I spoke at the scrutiny meeting on Tuesday, which was absolutely shambolic. I can't believe how awful that was, really, with people resigning and all sorts of things going on there. And Ros White gave a statement at the beginning, which I seemed very odd. Really, just seemed a way of she was covering herself somehow. And what seems to be the case is there seems to be a number of councillors like Adam, for example, and Janine, who are good, hard-working people who don't really know what is going on, because behind the scenes there seems to be another group of councillors who like Jonathan Smith, Ros White, and so on like that, and Stuart Brown and people like that, who seem to be driving this project forward, really, but in an underhand way, which is quite concerning. So those are my comments, really.
Thanks for that, Simon. Interesting points you raised there. John, did you want to come in?
Well, yeah, just on what Simon said. I mean, I don't know if it's worthwhile reviewing councillors' declaration of interests. If there's different groups with different interests in that. I think we should be as hard as we can looking at these things, or just find an orangutan on the site, and then we'd be golden.
Thanks, John. Interesting. I've got Sheila, then Rich, and then Paul Halton.
What interests me is we've sort of got two things here. There's one which is the issues that would make this land inappropriate to use. So it might be, I know I've read that, obviously if you have a load of housing here, the drainage into the Froome, the possibility of flooding, there's good planning issues that should be raised to be sort of emphasised through a planning idea. And then there's the issue of the fact that Mendip seems to have that its process seems to be problematic. So, is it better to separate these two issues? So, concentrate on the planning for the scrutiny board if they having to scrutinise planning, but then they need to have a separate scrutiny of the process that they've gone through in order to get to this stage, and should they revise their process? I don't know whether conjoining those is better than keeping them separate. Personally, I would want to deal with them separately so that you can sort each one out, and not, then people aren't able to say, well, excuse me, that's not a planning issue. We're not going to change things because that's nothing to do with planning. Do you see what I mean? It can get muddy if you confuse the two issues.
Yeah, thanks, Sheila. Interesting. Rich.
Yeah, just to answer, try and answer Simon's earlier question about the local green space status. Somebody told me it was a triple SSI. It's not. It was an open area of local significance, which is Mendip's way of badging and protecting local green spaces. But under the latest national planning policy framework, everybody across the country has to redesignate those spaces as local green spaces. And as Jane said, we tried to do that for East Hill and were rebuffed by Mendip probably about 2 years ago now when this process went through, and we're told that it would retain its OA OWLS status. But going forward, it does sound as though under the latest local plan part 2, it won't have any protection going forward in future once the OWLS status is taken away. So that's something that Mendip have badged. So it's not necessarily a national protection that it's got already, but it's got a local status, certainly. Not particularly satisfactory, but there it is. I think that's where we are. I've got 2 questions, if I can, just to throw in. On openness and kind of proper accountability, just looking at the members of Mendip Cabinet, we have 2 members of the Cabinet from Froome out of 10 councillors. One is Rich Pinnock and one is Damon Hooton. Now, I hope that all the other 8 members of that Cabinet are fully briefed and they know what they're going to be deciding on at Cabinet. In fact, I would have preferred it if this had gone back to full council. And I do worry, as Simon indicated, that we've already got a Cabinet who are pretty much decided that this is going to happen. And I think this is why they haven't done very much about it. They've tried to do it on the quiet. And I may be wrong. It may just be incompetency, but I think there's a deliberate will to make this happen. So I don't hold out much faith that we're going to see anything different, but maybe a couple of district councillors can advise me on that. But I think Cabinet, with 2 Frome councillors in there, we're going to lose the vote. The second question, going forward, and maybe Janine might know the answer to this, does it have to be 77 houses? You know, does it have to be that many houses? Would it be possible to do 10 or 15 on certain parts of the site and maintain the overall green spaces on that site? Is that something that could be looked at in future? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rich. Okay, Paul Horton, then Andy Palmer.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I just firstly, I feel like I probably should declare an interest as a director of the Frome Area Community Land Trust, as referred to by Andy Jones in his statement. And I just really wanted to say that speaking on behalf of the Frome Area Community Land Trust, that we are really keen and focused on bringing forward as much social housing as we can in Frome. But having said that, we always really emphasise working with the community and making sure that we develop in the right place, in the right density, etc., etc. So we are keen to work with Mendip to look at social housing, building social housing development on their land in wherever in Frome they'd like to talk to us. So, but as I say, we do emphasise the need to work with the community on that. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Paul. Andy.
Thanks, Steve. This is probably something that either Adam or Janine might be able to answer, but sort of expanding on Rich's point, I don't get why this has been a cabinet decision. I don't understand how a decision of this size, magnitude, financial transaction value is being made at the cabinet level. I can't envisage a situation where we, as Frome Town Council, would ever transfer an asset of that size for that development without it going to full council. It wouldn't be done in PAG, it wouldn't be done in Town Matters, or certainly not in TAG. So I can't get my head around why this isn't the case, and if anyone can explain that to me, I'd be really grateful.
Okay, I think Janine wants to jump back in and try and explain. So Hannah, if you could let Janine back in. Here we are. Or Janine. Hi, Janine. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Yes. Well, first and foremost, I completely take your point about the full council. We tried to get it back into full council. Helen Spauldon immediately asked after the cabinet decision for it to go to full council and was told that we couldn't. So the call-in was drafted, and thanks to Adam, it was successful. We have subsequently asked if we could have the decision taken back to full council, because that is our preference, and we know that the wider full council wants it to come that way. So far we haven't managed to successfully do that, but that is something we would prefer. The other thing was that the cabinet decision didn't come through scrutiny in the first place, which we were royally miffed about. And we did ask at the time, and we were told it didn't have to come through scrutiny, but we registered our disapproval at the time. And then of course you all witnessed the joy of scrutiny the other day. What was the other question? There were some other questions that I've forgotten now in respect of the site.
Janine, did it ever have local green space?
Yes. So so we had 250 green spaces that we'd allocated in the local plan, and the government housing inspector, the government planning inspector, said that we had too many green spaces, and we'd applied the criteria too liberally. and had basically said that we had to go away and revisit our local plan, and we would probably be having to remove our local green spaces. So so actually it wasn't Mendip in fact that removed that status, it was Mendip who were trying to put it on. That is unfortunate, and that is, yeah, that's kind of unrelated to this. So that was that question, and there was other questions. Andy, you asked something and I can't remember what you want to know.
It was just around the process and why the decision was made in Cabinet originally without actually coming to Council.
Quite, yes. No, good question. We don't know. Have I missed any? I feel like I've missed something completely and forgotten to answer it.
Don't think so.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks very much. Adam, did you want to jump in at this?
Yeah, I thought I'd add to what Janine just said. The local green space was a local plan part 2 inspector decision that he or she wasn't happy with the local green space designation in the local plan part 2, which meant it wants to put on this site. And so that's effectively been taken off for now. Another thing that I think Richard said, does it have to be 77 houses? Could it be 10 or 15? Well, that's a reasonable question, isn't it? Once you look at the constraints on the site and you look at the capacity for development, and then you do a master planning exercise and you see whether you can fit in the bat mitigation and the reptile mitigation and the habitat retention on site and so on. As far as I know, that some of that may have been done, but it's not been made public or widely circulated. So there's a process to go through, isn't there, on that? Potentially in future, when there's more information about the site and the development proposals, if there are any that come forward. And yeah, the original decision, I think in the previous administration may have taken this decision at Phoenix Sponsorship Board, which would have been behind closed doors, I'm told. And so we're being open about it and putting it through Cabinet, which is in the public domain. But at the same time, it didn't go through scrutiny before Cabinet, and that would have been better if it had done, because we wouldn't have had to drag it back to scrutiny after the decision and have it thrown back to Cabinet and drag the whole thing out. But the whole process of and as I said before, choosing a site and promoting it through a land transfer is the way that the council currently does this. And we're trying to open it up to be a bit more room, to be honest, and a bit more open and transparent and consultative with the community, because we like the way Frome Town Council does this sort of thing. Hopefully, I think on a good day, you'll be consulting people earlier and taking views into account before making a decision to proceed with a project. I think that's something that Town Council does quite well most of the time anyway.
Well, thanks for that.
If I've missed anything, please just keep asking the questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I got Sheila wanted to say something.
It was just the other thing about Saxonvale. I mean, is it really a non-starter to actually increase the number of social housing or affordable housing on Saxonvale? Because obviously it's got less than that both our plan and your plan, amended plan, has. It's designated with 20% when we would want it to be 30%, and that is what's in the local plan. So is it a complete non-starter to go to increase Saxonvale?
I think you should keep pursuing it, for sure.
Okay.
We will, have no fear. Thanks, Ginny. Any other questions? I've got Anita. Anita.
Yeah, just a very quick one, actually, Steve, because as Paul just reminded me, I should also perhaps declare an interest as a Director of Fair Housing for Frome. So.
I guess. Right. Any other questions? Helen Kay has put something on the Q&A. Don't know if you see my chat card. I believe the whole area has reverted to being a green space, as in LP1, because the inspector threw out all the green spaces in LP2.
That's my understanding as well.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what Adam and I have said. Yeah.
So that means it's an open area of local significance.
At present, yeah.
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 Jane, did you want to jump in at that point?
There are just a couple more questions from, I think it's Simon Bishop, not Sarah Bishop. One just about asking why is Astor the only RP, and that the price hasn't been made public. I don't think we can answer those questions, but maybe Janine or Adam might be able to.
We've asked the same question with regard to the registered provider, and in answer to the question about the price, I don't know why that's not been made available. I imagine it's commercially sensitive, I don't know, but it's certainly a question that we can ask.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. And I think Helen wanted to say something. Helen, you should be audible now. No. Helen, can you hear us?
Yes, it seems to be closing down and opening up again. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I mean, it closed down and opened up again, and I think that Jane was reading out my comment, so that's fine. With regard to Sheila's comment about Saxon Vale, I think it's to do with the fact that Mendip own the East Hill site, and by selling it to Astor, they see it as an asset that they can get a capital receipt for it. I've argued that that is not the only way to see this land, and that the land has an inherent value in itself. But that is why they're going to be able to afford to then build the affordable housing because of the sale of that land. So I don't see how they can then how it can be transferred to Saxon Vale. It's also to do with the land release fund, and that can't necessarily be transferred to Saxon Vale. So I just think we should keep those two things separate. That's all. And you also hopefully saw my comment about drainage, which doesn't seem to be taken into account at all. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Any more questions for anybody? No. Excellent. Okay.
Sorry, Steve, one has just popped in. Someone was typing. The Frome Town design statement states the importance of this site to Frome as a green space. The design statement was adopted by Mendip Planning Policy. Does that mean that all design statements aren't worth the paper they are written on? It's been typed in the box.
Leave that one for Jane, I think.
I'll answer that. No, I don't believe that. It means they're not worth the paper that they're written on. The fact is that the design statement, as I've correctly said, is adopted as part of Mendip Planning Policy, and this hasn't gone through the planning process yet. But obviously, if it does, then yes, that policy within the neighbourhood plan will be given some very strong weight. At least I would expect that it would be anyway, as with the other policies that issues that have been raised by the Mendip councillors in their report back to cabinet. So yes, obviously that's, you know, at a point, if it does make it through to a planning application, that will be something that we will be emphasising as well.
Great, thanks, Jane. Okay, thanks everybody. I think we've got an awful lot of comment, an awful lot of content that we need to sort of formulate into a statement from us as Frome Town Council. I totally agree with what Adam said, that we will be putting a statement together which will not just highlight some of our concerns, but also highlight how we as Frome Town Council go about doing consultations and getting the public involved in this process. What I'd like to propose is that as a committee, we delegate that authority to produce a statement to Jane, which then myself as chair and Paul Horton as deputy chair can run over, and if we're happy, that goes off to Mendip Council prior to their meeting next week. So that is my my proposal. If anyone's got any other proposals, if not, if we could vote on that, please. So if someone could propose that for me. Thanks, Rich, and someone second. Thanks, Mark. And we could all vote on that.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jane. So over to you.
Thanks. Yeah,
right.
I will aim to prepare something beginning of next week, and then get that signed off by you and Paul, and then sent on to Cabinet.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 5, to consider the major planning applications received in Appendix 1, which hopefully everybody's got. Right. Which one are we starting with, Jane?
Well, just bear with me a second while I get my notes transferred onto the other screen.
I think we'll start with number 413, which is 14 Bath Street, which is a cedar tree. Not something we often discuss, but I think this particular tree has a lot of local interest, a lot of local history, from what I understand, from people who've been here a lot longer than I have. And although I think obviously some work does need to be carried out, I think we just want to make the point that it should be done in a very professional and trying to think of the word now.
Sympathetic.
That's it. Sympathetic way. That would be my comment on that. If anyone else has got any comments, and I'll pass over to Jane now.
Thank you. I've sorted myself out now. So yeah, as Steve was saying, the address is actually 14 Bath Street, Frome, and the proposal is to carry out works to the cedar tree, which is covered by a preservation order, to remove the deadwood and lift the crown on the roadside to 5 metres and shorten one limb, which is going over the neighbour's hedge by 1 metre. I think I'm right in saying that this was voted as Frome's favourite tree recently, which was a poll that the town council carried out. And just to note really that the agent is actually a professional tree surgeon. So hopefully that will give some reassurance that, you know, the work will be done well. But you know, if you like, we could make a comment to Bo Walsh, who is the officer dealing with it, just to say, just to reiterate that, you know, we would want the works to be done sympathetically, and I've forgotten the other word now.
Well, I said professionally, but I was hunting for yeah.
Also that it is, you know, voted as Frome's favourite tree. You might as well put that one in as well.
Yeah.
Great.
So I mean, do you want to vote on that as being a formal response?
Okay, I'll propose it. Thanks, Sheila. All votes. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, the next one that we were going to discuss. So I've been taking notes and have moved off from my original page. So it was number 422 on our list, and this is Midfields, 119 Marston Lane, Frome, and the proposal is to replace an existing hedge with space boarding fence and a faced block wall and piers. And before I go any further, just to reassure anybody who is viewing, councillors have actually looked at all of these plans in advance of the meeting. And if any of them do want to see a plan, then I can bring it up on the screen just for clarification. So back to the application, there is a comment on Mendip's planning portal from the ward councillor, who has said that they don't have any objections, and they feel that the wall and fencing fits in with the surrounding area and doesn't cause any issues at the junction that it sits on. And whilst I regret the loss of the hedge, they feel that the new construction does improve the look of the corner, and that they would support the granting of permission. And I believe Mark had some comments that he wanted to make on this.
Yeah, and I circulated some photographs earlier today or yesterday of me trying to pull out of that junction. As part of my do-gooding thing, there's somebody in Marston Close who I actually visit and make sure they're okay as part of the 5 Neighbours thing. So I do use that junction a few times every week. As you pull out from Marston Close into Marston Lane and try and look right where buses hurtle up, Marston Lane being a bit of a rat run at the moment, you are unsighted by firstly the small wall on this property and then a container they have in their front yard. I note from the plans that the wall and fence are slightly dropped at that corner, but if they are built up right to the corner, this will even further limit vision looking to the right, which I guess is probably north. And I would like to see some way of improving the visibility coming from that junction. Should also be noticed that this work is practically finished. They've been doing it all year, certainly from the first lockdown, and it's built almost up until the corner now. So, and it's a great improvement on what was there before, but I am concerned about visibility on that corner.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any other comments? Jane?
Can I just check, Mark? Is it the new works that have been carried out that are causing the issues with the visibility, or were there already issues with the visibility?
There are already, the new work hasn't reached that corner yet. It's about 20-30 meters shy of it at the moment, but they seem to be going up to it quite rapidly. At the moment, there's still a wall and a hedge, and as I say, a container, which I think they keep their building materials in. Hopefully that's only temporary. But it really is taking your life in your hands trying to pull out of there. Marston Lane, with all our recent roadworks that have happened, is being used as a bit of a rat run. And we know that we looked last time at some development work going on in Marston Lane, which will only make it busier. And so I really think this should be an opportunity to try and have a look at that corner. I think if we could ever get Highways interested in it, they should have a look at it to see what can be done there, because as I say, buses come up there. I was wiped out yesterday by one. So it is difficult.
Can we ask the Highways to have a look, Jane? Is that something we can?
We can ask Highways to have a look. I mean, I think if there's already an existing problem with visibility, I'm not sure that there's much that Highways can do about that unless that visibility can be resolved by them either lowering an existing wall or greenery, whatever is causing the problem. But I think certainly as part of our response, we can point out that there is already an issue with visibility, and we would want to ensure, or we want Highways to ensure, that the proposed works don't make this issue any worse. It's very difficult. I mean, we know of several places around the town where, you know, once a hedge gets to a certain height, you just can't see to pull out of a junction, and Highways will write to the owners and ask them to reduce the height of hedges and so on.
But once sorry, Jane, but once this fence is up, it's going to be permanent. It will always reduce it.
Exactly.
It won't be trimmed seasonally. And so this is an opportunity to try and fix this situation there and then. And we should also ask if they intend keeping this container thing in the front garden, which further limits visibility.
Yep. Agree with that.
So is everybody happy with that as a proposed response?
And I'm happy to propose it.
Great, thanks, Mark. Someone second it, please. Thanks, John. And all went to favour. Great, thank
John
you.
oh yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. So thank you. That takes us on to application number 425 on our list. The address is Charles House at Eagle Lane, and the proposal is to change the use from a print studio to a use class A4 drinking establishment. The proposed drinking establishment, I'm going to call it a pub just as easier. The adjoining statement with the application says it will accommodate up to 40 people. It does include a noise impact assessment, although the noise impact assessment is not very detailed, and suggests that there won't be any additional impact on local residents because there's already a significant amount of disruption from the kebab shop on the other side of the road.
When did they do the noise assessment? We've been in lockdown since March.
I'm not sure that there was any actual physical noise measurements taken. You know, I think it's just a statement rather than an assessment in that respect. You know, I mean, I think it's always good to see new businesses coming into the town, but you know, personally, I have concerns about the noise assessment, but I'd like to hear what councillors think.
Great. Any comments, questions? John, and then Rich.
It seems to me that there are residential properties just there. And is there a history of a club being just there or not? I know across the road it's true. So there's no history, and there's pre-existing flats and things around there. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Thanks. Thanks, John. Rich, and then Anita.
I was just going to say, it's really Mendip's licensing that would have to make that sort of decision, isn't it? Rather than ours say so. There are definitely flats around there. So to me, it's all down to whether or not the noise is not too bad, and presumably it won't get a late license.
Yeah, thanks. Anita.
Yeah, I was just thinking, is it actually going to be a wine bar or just a pub, an open general pub, or a nightclub? We don't really know what it's going to be yet, presumably.
It's described as a drinking establishment.
Yeah, which could be anything, couldn't it, really? I was just thinking, I mean, with the Wheat Sheaf just across the road there as well, I guess they're fairly used to late noise. Do we know any complaints that come out of the Wheat Sheaf?
I'm not aware of any. I think
not recently. The guy who's running this or proposing to run this place has a website called The Cocktail Way. I think he wants to make it like a more chic, discreet cocktail bar.
A bit like Flow.
Yeah, but almost like a speakeasy one, from what I can make out. So quite low key, but and I think he's also one of the residents in the street, so he's probably consulted himself on whether he thinks it's noisy or not. So.
What's RSPCA mean in this context?
Sorry?
It says RSPCA on Eagle Lane. What does that mean? What is that? Why is it called the RSPCA?
Royal Society of Prevention Cruelty to
Alcoholics.
I don't know.
I was going to just say about Bath, number 23, Bath Street, Wheat Sheaves. They do now take people in around the back, don't they? They have a side entrance. So much of the noise, presumably, is not going the way of Eagle Lane anymore. So they've already mitigated that. I also think it's quite a brave step to open a pub in this climate.
Lizzie.
Yeah, I think on the, I mean, it sounds fabulous. Sign me up, but that's just personal. From a planning perspective, I wonder if, with the noise assessment, if there's been consideration of the noise to the rear of the property. Because it's all well and good asking the people on Eagle Lane looking forward to Bath Street, but actually kind of noise, the way that the drawing looks, it's all at the back of the building. And so it could be that residents of Cheap Street are more affected. The other thing on the drawing, and this might be more of a building control thing, so you can tell me to it's not relevant. I can only see one entrance, which means I can't see a fire escape. And I don't know if that's probably building control, but just something to make a note of, if it would be appropriate.
Yeah, thanks. Any other, Jane?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think it was Rich who was talking about the licensing. Yes, absolutely, it will be them that determine the time at which it can open. But a noise impact assessment is something that the planners would want to see as part of the process. And there seems to be a lack of clarity, even between ourselves of perhaps who could be impacted by noise, how bad it will be. So my suggestion would be that actually we would want to see a more comprehensive noise assessment carried out. And yes, Lizzie, I think you're right about only having one entrance. There are some circumstances in where that can be allowed, but ultimately that would be something that building control would comment on. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other comments? No. That's really noise assessment and building control, fire escape. But we're not sort of objecting as such, are we? It's just, or are we?
No, I mean, I think we could say that we've got no objection in principle, subject to a more comprehensive noise assessment being provided.
Yeah.
So if everybody is happy with that as a response.
Yep, works for me. Someone propose that, please. Lizzie, someone second Rich, and all those in favour. Anita.
I disappeared for a minute.
Oh yeah.
Great.
That's unanimous, thank you. And the last application that I've actually highlighted for discussion is number 426 on our list. And this is 26 Vallis Way, Frome. And the proposal is for the replacement of window units with double glazed UPVC sash windows and to replace the door with a composite door of similar style. The reason that permission is needed in this instance is because the property is actually in a conservation area and admittedly only on street view, having looked up and down at some of the other properties along this street. Some of the others do appear to have already had UPVC windows installed. Some of them are better than others, and as a general rule, I know that Mendip's Conservation Officer does prefer to see like for like placements, but over to you to discuss, really.
I've got John first. And then Paul.
So I live in a conservation area and people have done this. So it's quite common. The other thing is Vallis Way, it is a noisy road. And I know people have moved out of that place because of the noise and the fumes. So this is someone who's trying to make their house more livable. And it says here, the UPVC sash windows. So it should look very similar and it'll last a very long time. As someone who's repaired a lot of sash windows, I understand the feeling of wanting to chuck them and get plastic ones. So I would have no objection to this because they're actually saying like for like, they just want to use a different material. So because they've said they're going to do sash. So I think the look would be, it might not be the same material, but it will probably last a lot longer. So I have no objection.
All right, thanks for that. Paul.
Yeah, I'd like to object, as I said in my email. Well, I mean, firstly, I think it's absolutely shocking, really, that the state of the windows as they are is a kind of failure of maintenance by the housing association, by the looks of it. So that's a kind of starting point. You should never have got into that state in the first place, and that's to the detriment of the tenants that are living there. And now we're kind of faced with this kind of desperate situation where they need to be replaced. And the proposal is to replace them with the cheapest and most harmful plastic known to man. I know it's ubiquitous all over the world and all over town, but it's a terrible material. And it's about time, you know, we don't have any control in most of the town because people don't have to apply for planning permission to replace their timber windows with plastic windows. But in the conservation area, they do. And I think it's an opportunity for us to say, no, we've had enough of plastic windows. You know, we want a better material. You know, John says they'll look the same, but they won't. They look cheap and nasty, mostly plastic windows, and they won't last very long. They probably won't last half as long as the wooden windows that are coming out, even though they've been badly maintained. So I'm suggesting that we should object to this, and we should demand that at the very least they're replaced with aluminium double glazed windows. You know, high quality aluminium double glazed windows will look far nicer, will last 2 or 3 times as long as plastic, and can be recycled at the end of their life. So they tick many boxes. They might be a bit more expensive to install, but then the Housing Association have been saving money by not maintaining these windows for a number of years. So let's see them spend some of this money on high quality windows, which we can be proud of in our town.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Mark.
You won't be surprised that I want to comment on this. I've been dealing with this family for the last year, to my knowledge, and they've been dealing with Astor for at least 3 years before that, trying to get their windows replaced. It's an elderly family that live there. The mother is housebound, in fact, bedbound when I went to visit her. The windows are falling out. Astor haven't maintained them, and it's taken interventions by myself and other people to get Astor to do anything at all about this. Yes, I would like to see. I mean, this is 100 yards from my house. I'm not allowed to have. I have to have wooden windows because I'm listed, but I also live in a conservation area, and I would prefer to have decent windows. But we've already had demonstrated tonight that you can get something that looks almost the same and doesn't look too awful. I don't want this family to have another winter of being cold and wet on a point of principle. I think this all sounds like a sob story. It's like Britain's Got Talent, but that's not what it's about. It's I really think they deserve better. They have been let down by Astor, but that's where we are. And so they need to have something warm and dry. And if this is the quickest way, and we can hold Astor's feet to the fire a bit to have something that looks at least half decent, then that's what we should do. But we shouldn't stand in the way of having these windows replaced.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any other comments? John, Director John?
Well, just to follow up, I mean, for me, it's the look is the key thing. And of course, we want people to be warm and dry. But by using the argument about the materials used, then we should never have solar panels or windmills anywhere in the area, because those face exactly the same dilemma as UPVC windows in terms of their lack of ability to be recycled, et cetera, and toxic materials in them. So I think that's a moot argument. I think the big argument is about replacing these windows in a cost-effective way. So,
okay. Lizzie and then Sheila.
I think it comes to, if you own a property in a conservation area, whether you are a private individual owner, a private landlord, or a social landlord, you have a duty of care to that building. And there are rules for those buildings. As a landlord, you also have a duty of care to the people that live in that building. There are very clear rules about environmental health rules and public health rules about the quality of a home that a housing association needs to provide. And it sounds like Astor have just failed on this, and they have a chance to put it right. And they can put it right in a way that works for the building and that works for the people that live in it by spending a couple of £100 more per window. You know, it's not bank busting money here. It's potentially going to cost them a couple of extra grand to do the best thing for both sides of this. So I think we can lean on it. I think we should say, no, this isn't good enough. You've got to try harder, and you can have outcomes that work for both. And that's part of your responsibility as a landlord of an old building. Full stop.
Okay, thanks, Lizzie. Sheila.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lizzie, and I think the point should be made that we're not stopping Astor doing anything. We are actually encouraging them to do the right thing. The fact that we'd like them, and we would ask them in a conservation area at the very least to put in something that is conservational, if that's a word. You know, it's not stopping them. It's not stopping them doing anything. They can do this. It's easy. It's not as if it's a rare product. This is something that's being used all over the town as well. It's just it's a more up-to-date product, and it will last longer, and in the long run cost them less because they won't have to repair it so often.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. John, and then Anita.
Mine's very short. There is already precedence for people in conservation areas getting permission and replacing all their windows with these things. And some of them are badly done. And the ones that are making sash windows out of that material, it's very difficult to tell. So I think the fact that there is precedence means that you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, John. Anita.
Yeah, I guess really the point for me is, I mean, I hear what Mark's saying, and I'm a sucker for a sob story, but I think the point you're making about holding Astor to account, I think is very valid, and the principle is sound. But I guess the worrying thing is, if they're going to drag their heels over this and play silly bees over it, and just take so much time to get it done, that these poor people have to go through another winter, where does that really leave us? Surely we also have a moral responsibility to make sure the people of town are looked after. So I'm really quite torn on this. I mean, if we could get Astor to agree with it quickly and get it done, I'd be totally in favour. But if it means they're going to drag their heels over it and take another year, 18 months before anything is done, that seems really harsh on the people who are living there. That's the only point I'd make, really.
Thanks. Jane, who is the ultimate decision maker on this? Would the conservation guy go and have a look, or?
Yeah, it would be the planning officer. I haven't got it listed on here who the officer is, but yeah, ultimately the conservation officer will give their advice on this. And just going back to John's John's point, really, there are so many people that don't know that they need consent to have UPVC windows in a conservation area, and in my experience, it's only relatively recently that we've actually seen applications come forward for people to change them, and I think that's why there are so many UPVC windows in conservation areas already. And unfortunately, it's not the kind of thing that Mendip has the time or the capacity to go around and enforce all of those. You know, it's just never going to happen. But you know, just listening to the discussion here, it's clear that councillors are torn. You know, and I'm just wondering if we want to say something.
Hang on a minute, because I know there's a few other people wanting to make some points. Okay, and I'll come back to you if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
I know Mark, and I think was it Andy? I saw his hand up. So Mark first, and then Andy.
Well, let Andy make his point. I just want to come back on something.
Okay.
Recap.
Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with Mark. I get what everybody's saying. Astor have a duty of care to the tenant and to the building. Or it's not the greatest material, or perhaps not design aesthetic or in line fully with the rules around conservation. I'm not prepared to see people be cold during the winter, particularly not when they're bed bound. It's not what we're about. It's not what we should be doing. We should be getting this through as quick as possible, get them sorted, and we can argue about the whys and the wherefores of the design later, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Mark, and then I thought I saw a hand. Oh, Paul, yeah.
Yeah, my point on this is, yeah, I live in a conservation area. I chose to live in a conservation area because the house I wanted to live in is here. A lot of the people in social housing have no choice over where they live. They are put in a building which we have decreed to be of national interest, that they just see themselves in a leaky old house and they want it fixed. I think if there is any delay over this, and I'm not trying to force anybody's hand, but looking at the correspondence I've seen over the last, well, I've only seen it for the last year, but they have 3 or 4 years of previous correspondence with ASTA. I think ASTA are just looking for an excuse for us to say, you've got to do it in these more expensive materials. And then they can go back and say, look, we can't afford to do this. I'm afraid we're just going to have to patch them up again. They put the scaffolding up every 5 years, paint the windows shut so that people can't get in, can't open their windows. And that seems to be their minimum level of maintenance. And so, yeah, I think I've got contacted because I was a ward councillor, and I think it's the most important part of the work that we do as councillors is actually look after people on our wards. And so I did try and fight their corner for them. But I also am very concerned, as somebody who lives very nearby, about the creeping ubiquity of UPVC windows. I just hope that, and I showed you photographs of what the street looks like, they are creeping all along that street. I just hope that there is a material that ASTA can afford to buy that will make it look, that will mitigate the look of this material and satisfy the needs of the residents.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Paul and then Lizzie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I totally agree with Mark and Andy and things that these tenants shouldn't be made to go through another winter with the poor state of these windows as they are. However, 2 things really. One is the planning officer, who's Josh Causey, by the way. All they need to do is go back to the applicant or the agent and say, we're not happy with the materials, you can swap the materials. It's not going to delay the planning process. You don't have to put a new planning application in. So it's not going to actually delay getting windows in. So that's one point. The other point is, even if they do get planning permission to put plastic windows in, that doesn't mean to say they're going to do them before this winter or this winter's out. That just means they've got planning permission. So we may actually kind of justify or support a banned decision based on the idea that these tenants are going to be in a better state during the winter, and actually that might not happen. So I just really wanted to make that point. That's it.
Thanks, Paul. Lizzie, sorry.
That's all right. So it's similar to Paul actually on the time issue. If the lead time for aluminium windows is significantly longer than the lead time for UPVC windows in terms of ordering and buying, then good God, speed is of the essence here. But I don't imagine that the lead time for buying those is any different. And then my other thing is a broader point, really, maybe a call out to ASTA to say, we've got significant problems with fuel poverty and people living in cold homes across the country, across Mendip, and in Frome. Social housing typically actually performs better in terms of energy efficiency than private housing, but there are going to be some properties that ASTA has and some people living in those properties who desperately need help. There's a free energy advice service across Mendip that's provided by the Centre for Sustainable Energy in Bristol. There's significant funding available at the moment for vulnerable people, people on benefits, people with health vulnerabilities to cold, for energy efficiency improvements. So I would absolutely love a chance to talk to ASTA to say, well, what's your energy strategy? What are you doing about your homes and how can we help? Because, picking off one property at a time, fixing the windows might not actually make this house, it might make it less drafty, but it might not make it warmer per se, because the problem might be the heating system or the insulation. So, I think if we can use this conversation as a springboard to a bigger conversation with ASTA, I think that could be a really positive thing. And I'm very happy to take part in that if somebody can reach out to ASTA on our behalf.
Thanks. Doesn't bode very well from building 77 houses on East Hill, does it?
Really good point, Lizzie. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Anita.
Is there actually anyone that can take ASTA to task? I mean, who are they accountable to in terms of adhering to the rules about what the minimum requirement from a housing association point of view? Who's actually pulling the strings there? Do we know?
Any ideas, Jane? No.
No, I mean, I don't. I mean,
Social housing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that it was sort of done through the district council, but there are providers in their own right now, and I'm sure there must be some kind of ombudsman. I don't know that for certain without checking, but yeah, I mean, I think Lizzie's absolutely right. I mean, there's the response that we can make on this planning application, but it does seem that maybe there's a next step as well, which is.
Well, I'm happy to take on I'm happy to contact someone in Mendip about Asta, unless Lizzie wants to do it. But we can have a chat about that, Lizzie. In terms of the comment,
there should be some discussion with an ombudsman.
Yeah.
Regarding the way they're dealing with things.
In terms of this particular.
Steve, sorry, I think Mark's saying something but is on mute.
Sorry, Mark, you're on mute.
I was, yeah. Sorry. Before you go ahead with that, I think you should have sight of the correspondence on this, just to build up some sort of picture on it. I can forward that to you, but it is quite involved.
Okay, yeah, please do. Yeah, what I'm hearing, okay, and Jane, jump in if I got this wrong, is that we really don't want to object we don't want to delay this in any way, shape or form, because this family really do need these windows done. We're really disappointed with Asta, even a stronger word than that. And we really want Asta to sort this out before the weather turns any colder than it is already. And Asta really shouldn't just fall back on the cheapest possible solution to putting a window in or windows or whatever it is, especially in a conservation area. That's what I'm hearing. Over to you guys.
And that we'd like to have ongoing talks with them about the sort of broader issues around this, which is
Jane.
So I've written a suggested response.
Good, I knew you would.
So we're shocked by the current state of the windows that Asta has let them get into. Asta has a duty of care to their tenants and to the building. We support the need for replacement windows as a matter of urgency due to the current living conditions of the tenant. However, we would prefer to see the use of high quality aluminium windows rather than UPVC. Is that reasonable? Oh, and the follow-up bit that Sheila said.
And also, is it right? Would it be right to say that it's a cost-effective option? This is not that much more expensive than the UPVC. Lasts longer. All those sort of issues that both Lizzie and Paul have mentioned.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, are we right in saying it's a cost-effective option to do that?
I think Asta would argue against that by saying, do you know how many windows we've got in our housing estate? And if we had to do this for all of them, we would be bankrupt. And being devil's advocate, I'm sure that's what they'll say. But
not all their houses are in a conservation area, are they?
Not all of them, no. A lot of them around here are.
Or you pay your money, it takes your choice, don't you? I mean, they've got houses in conservation area that look worth a lot more. They take a bit more to maintain, don't they? I also think we should make some sort of comment that Asta should not delay getting these windows fixed. I don't know how you squeeze that in, Jane, but
I'll squeeze it in. Okay, so I've added that comment to the end of
but there is also an issue about there's UPVC windows and there's UPVC windows. And the different sashes, so there's different versions of the same UPVC. I know some sash windows that are made from UPVC up the road. I'd never have them, but you can't tell the difference. They look exactly the same. So I think it's about quality, what they're talking about. If it's just in and out in one day, those kind of windows where they just plaster them in, then that's crap. But they're talking. They said sash, but is the quality there? I don't.
Show us your windows again.
As a general point.
Look at Anne's window.
And what is that? Sash UPVC.
Yes.
Mighty fine window, Anne.
Yes. Sash, UPVC. About £1,000 each.
To me, we go on, Jane.
So, having listened to those comments, rather than say we would prefer to see the use of high quality aluminium windows rather than UPVC, I could change that to say, or I'm not sure that it exists, high quality UPVC windows.
Is there such a Paul? Is there such a thing?
I don't know.
Paul.
There-
Sash,
I mean,
Sash.
it's true that UPVC windows come in different qualities. Some are better than others, but I wouldn't support UPVC windows at all because of the material.
Yeah.
It's a toxic material that can't be recycled. So, and it, however good quality it is, it's not going to last in the same way that an aluminium window would. So I think we should specify aluminium personally.
And it's the environmental issue as well, isn't it? With
yeah.
If it's UPVC, it's UPVC. Whether it's good quality or bad quality, it's still UPVC.
I'd love to know the difference in cost between a decent UPVC and an aluminium. I suspect it's not that much.
Go on, Jane.
So I'm just really looking for clarification as to which version you would like to put forward to vote. So either that we would prefer to see the use of high quality aluminium windows rather than UPVC, or high quality UPVC windows. Please don't make me say that again.
I've got my views. Can anyone else got a view? Anita?
I'd go with the former, I think.
Thanks. Anyone else? There's lots of nods for the former. So we don't want UVPC, is that what we're saying? That's what I'm hearing.
So we prefer aluminium.
Prefer aluminium.
We prefer. I'm not against UPVC, to be honest, but we prefer.
Okay, thank you. So can I get you to vote on that, please?
Someone propose it. Anita, seconded by Paul. All in favour. I think Andy's gone.
Oh, he has gone. Yeah, so unanimous for those councillors that remain. Thank you.
Well done.
Well done, Jane.
Okay. So unless there are any other applications that councillors specifically want to discuss,
did we have to have a look at the gates on the old Bath Arms as it's next to that lovely tree?
if you'd like to. Bear with me.
I think the local society jibbed at it a bit, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Just bear with me 1 second.
Sorry, everyone.
1 Palmer Street. Number 417, Jane.
Yes, so as Steve said, this is number 417 and 418 on our list because it's actually a listed building. So there is a full application on a listed building application. The description is for the installation of secure gates at the entrance and retrospective permission to retain and regularize elements of the existing structures within the rear seating area and to rationalize the remaining screens to provide discrete screening for the bins and barrel storage internally, and to regularize the relocation of the main bar into the front room on the first floor, the works to the craft bar, which is most notably uncovered the original well, and the installation of a new door and the repositioning of the pizza kitchen partition externally. And externally, the extensive plastic, acrylic, vinyl signs will be removed. So the majority of the works that they're talking about there are actually retrospective. They carried them out already. I mean, I think can only welcome the removal of plastic, acrylic, vinyl signs. and that they have said in their accompanying statements that actually the external gates and the partitions are partly due to the new COVID regulations. And certainly as far as the internal works are concerned, you know, I would actually defer to the conservation officer's advice, because they'll actually be, you know, be able to go in and look at the work. But just really, Mark wants to talk about his concerns about the gates.
I have no concerns over them unless they're made of PVC. But...
Yeah, the Civic Society have said that they've got no objection in principle, but the regularisation of successive works to the interior should be the subject of a visit by the conservation officer. And the colour of the new painted gate facing onto Bath Street should be carefully monitored to relate to the conservation area and surrounding buildings. And they've also welcomed the removal of the flags and the UPVC sign boards. And I'm
defer conservation officer. As far as I'm concerned. That really is where all the kids go, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the conservation officer will also look at the colour of the gates and advise on that, as well as the internal works as well.
Yeah, cool with that.
Good.
Okay, so unless anybody does want to raise any of the others, just to ask that you're happy for me to respond to the other applications that we haven't discussed as set out in the notes.
Yes, please.
Can I get a vote on that?
Oh, Sheila, thanks, and Lizzie second, and yeah, that's great.
And that's unanimous as well. Thank you.
That it?
Lovely. Thank
you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Good on, Steve.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks,
Bye, Steve.
Sorry to bang on a bit.